It's 6 o'clock. I should have. So if anybody's showing up, just if you would sound off of who's with us, so I kind of know who's out there watching. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. But let's try not to bombard too much at once with questions. Maybe try to save that towards the end, if possible. Anybody out there? Want to sound off? We got 12 people, but nobody's saying who's with us, so I'll just go ahead and start. So it's September 5th, and it's been 34, 35 days, however you want to count it, that Samantha's been missing. All right, Amanda has sounded off. And we just got back. Probably many of you know Betsy's here. Thanks. Bonnie, Amy, hello. Hello, everybody. What was the man-made item you saw? You're all amazing. Thanks for the kind words. So we just got done with Kevin. We were up on the mountain from last Wednesday until Sunday night. We were all up there. So we came down Sunday morning, Sunday night, a few different teams, and then I know a couple. I know Cheryl Beth with the K9, and Tom and Tim and a couple other people went back up there on Monday and I think Tuesday. But we got tons of drones up there. Thanks, Hells, Bells, Kel, nice. Lots of drones. So right now, well, many of you probably know the official SAR search has ended. I guess they have been kind of zooming around with their birds, watching, taking a peek out, and whatnot on what was. So that was like 2 days. I think they went back up there with their helicopters and did a couple flybys, but lots of drones. There's tons of drones and drone operators just taking pictures of every nook and cranny. Amy, thanks guys. Every nook and cranny we scoured. So man-made objects. So I was working the one place that hasn't really been searched real thoroughly is Sperry Peak and Morning Star and the Stillaguamish drainage. Other than just like, I don't know, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, whatever off the trail of that whole drainage area, it hasn't really been searched that thoroughly. So we, after Kevin got all the official search and rescue maps that show where people searched, helicopter searched, drone searched, and dog searched, we were able to go and then where everybody else, all the volunteers searched, we realized that there was a good deal of Sperry and the Stillaguamish drainage that wasn't searched. So we pretty much focused on that last week. Didn't turn up anything. I did see a man-made object, and it ended up turning out to be a balloon after Clay and Tom risked their lives getting to it. But from my end, all I could tell, even with binoculars, was that it was oval round shape, and it was blue and white, and her backpack was a blue or purple and white. So it was, and we couldn't get a drone up at the time. Our drone operators were all gone off the mountain at the time. So Tom and Clay, risked themselves to go over there and get it because it was on the east side of Sperry, which was a place that wasn't checked. And if she was on top of Sperry and fell, then, her backpack would have probably landed in that area. And there's a video I got on my YouTube and I think on my Facebook how they searched the cliffs in the direction the witness saw her go. The police deemed too dangerous for them to search. Yeah, we personally searched those cliffs and that ridge, and lots of other people have too, and no sign at all. So tonight what I was going to talk about, because I keep getting tons and tons of messages and emails and tips and leads on everybody's thoughts or hypothesis on what could have transpired. So that's where we're at right now. We have scoured that mountain. I mean, we're picking up other people's trash. We're finding balloons that could have been released from China, as far as we know. All right, thanks, Bonnie. So we're literally finding other people's trash and no sign of Samantha, either intentionally left or unintentionally left. Cascades Mountains, Grandmother Ann, thanks for joining us. Thanks all you guys for joining us, and thanks for all your, and Shelly, um, thanks for all your kind words. So I want to talk about that because now, Kevin and the Fine Sam Sayers group, and then us, we're at this impasse of, what direction does everybody take? I know that the John Francis Foundation is flying in tonight. They're meeting with Kevin tomorrow, and supposed to be going up to the mountain and getting a lay of the land and surveying it and doing all that stuff to figure out a good attack for them to come back and do a search or be effective in helping others search. So that's what's going on right now and what's going to be happening the rest of this week. I'm supposed to, if I could get off work, I'm supposed to go with Kevin and them up there, since I got a good real idea of the lay of the land and being a mountain man and all that stuff. So he invited me to join him if I can get out of work. So we'll see. But so right now, I mean, it's been 35 days. I get a lot of people who are like, oh, you think she could survive for 35 days? You're an idiot, blah, blah, blah. Well, there was just some article, some Mongolian guy in the Himalayas that was lost for 7 weeks and came out and is alive now. So you never know, I've learned and I was taught, but I've seen and learned through my experience that sheer will is what gets you through. I mean, yeah, you need, your food, your water, your shelter to stay alive. But sheer will. My father, when he was passing away, he lasted like 10 days without a drop of water. We couldn't believe it. I mean, it was like 10 days, you haven't had any water. He was dying of cancer. Horrible thing to witness. And he went 10 days without any type of water. The only thing that he did get, no, you're not late. Anything he did get was his morphine, on a cotton swab, and then when we could like moisten his lips with a cotton swab for water. So, it's 3 or 4 days, 5 days tops. You could survive without water, and my dad went 10 days. So what does that tell you? So anybody can survive any situation as long as you, one, have the will, and two, have the resources to do it. So I believe that, there is a chance she could be alive. Where would she sustain that? So let's go over, some hypothesis of if Sam's still alive after 35 days. Well, one, in order to be alive, you need food, water, and shelter. Okay? In order to collect food, water, and create shelter, you need to be mobile. There's lots of food out there. I witness it every day. We eat it. We got king boleta mushrooms. There's grasshoppers, there's grubs. If you want to talk about insects, there's whistle pigs, or pikas, as they're known as. We call them whistle pigs if you know how to snare and trap. There's mountain cranberries, there's blueberries, huckleberries, salmon berries, any type of berry you could think of that grows up here. Thimbleberries. So there is all the nutrients that you need out there food-wise to sustain yourself. And being in such high country, there's water runoff everywhere. There's plenty of water everywhere. You got caves, you got cat hollows, you got holes in cliffs, you got huge rotted out stumps, so there is, from LeConnor, thanks, cool, Nick of the Woods. So shelter is relatively easy to come by. But so back to, if she's surviving this long, she needs food, water, and shelter. Well, in order to be able to do that, either one, if you're stuck tight in a spot, like if she fell into a cave, or she fell into a mine at it, or some hole, or into underneath the ice, and you're just stuck there and you're immobile, you better have fallen into the Garden of Eden in order to be stuck and not be mobile and survive this long. There's no way around it, unless you have the food and nutrients on you to sustain yourself stuck. Then by all means. But as far as I was under the understanding, she had like 3 sandwiches with her. Could she sustain herself off of rationing out 3 sandwiches for this long? Yes, she could, depending on what kind of sandwiches they were. As long as she had water. Water is the number one thing that you really need to survive. After that, you could eat bird droppings to stay alive. There's been stories in Asia where Buddhist monks and other people, would live for months and months and months off of eating bird poop, because they didn't believe that eating anything else would bring them to enlightenment. So they would eat bird poop and actually sustain themselves off of it. Could be just like hype, could be BS, but that's their legends and stories. So water is the number one thing. All right. Now, if she is alive and she is mobile enough to be able to procure the things she needs to sustain herself, then that means she has to be far outside the areas that are being searched heavily. Because if she was mobile and within, the couple mile radius of the mountain, you would think that she would be able to come out of the canopy, because there's tons of places that you can come out of the forest and be seen. So why wouldn't she, if she was mobile enough to sustain herself for 35 days, why couldn't she get herself out from underneath the canopy and make signal to be found and discovered? Big question. So what if she is mobile, but semi-mobile, and she can sustain herself off of collecting and running around? What about an odd scenario that she hit her head and she's confused or scared? Yes, I will bring that up here when we get to it. But great question. I do have that. We'll touch on that. So that means, she's got to be outside the search area, the area being searched, which they say 90% of people lost in the wilderness is usually found within a 6-mile radius of where they were last seen. A 6-mile radius out there is pretty big. It goes all the way past the Red Mountain to the south. The east is all the way past Monte Cristo. North is going up above, above Verlo by a mile or two. And then west it's going all the way out past Mount Pilchuck. So it's a huge area as far as 6 miles. Not being rude or anything, but what if she doesn't want to be found? Just a question. I hope she is found. Caribou Country Outdoors. Great question, and I guarantee there will be an answer for that. Like I said, not only have I ran through every scenario in my mind here at home, up in the woods, picking other people's brains on thoughts, but also all of the supporters and followers sending me all their thoughts, also their ideas, their what ifs. So yes, that's something that is on my board right here, as you can tell. And we're going to discuss that one too. Okay, so if Sam was on the mountain and she became disoriented and went outside the search area, the 1 or 2 miles, let's say, of her PLS, the point last seen, why isn't there any intentional or unintentional sign? You move through this area, you will leave sign, you will break branches, you will crush leaves, and if you know what to look for, you can see it. Not everybody can see it, but if you know what to look for, you can see it. I walked over my same boot path year after year after year because I know how to tell which way I went. I know what branches were broken that I broke or whatnot. So if you know how to look for sign, you can find it easily. So why isn't there any unintentional sign? In the areas of where if you were disoriented and you were traveling down a route that the terrain only can make you go, why wouldn't you leave sign unintentionally? And then another question is, why wouldn't you leave sign intentionally if you knew you were going somewhere where you haven't been and where someone, if they did come to look for you, would not guess that you were going that way. So you would leave sign going down there. There is none. Okay, people ask about injuries. Okay, what if she fell and she hurt her legs, broke her legs? What if she hit her head and she's confused, amnesia, she don't know what's going on? Yeah, that's a possibility. You know, as far as the leg injuries, if it's really bad, now how long can you sustain the injury if you're still out there in the wilderness? You break a femur, you know, or a pelvis. I mean, that's a serious injury out in the wilderness. And if you like hit the carotid artery, or you know, have some massive internal bleeding, I mean, the pain itself from breaking a pelvis or a femur is enough to throw you into shock, to a state of where, you know, even if you try to move, that shock can kill you. Shock can kill you. And if you are like going day and day out in a constant state of shock, you will succumb to it and die. So now a head injury. Head injuries is the same thing, especially at high elevations. Head injuries are always double or triple what it would be if you were at regular elevation. So that's the thing. Yeah, she could have fell, hit her head, you know, and just had no idea where she was, and just started walking off the mountain in any direction. But then again, if she was, where's the sign of where she went? Unintentional sign. So that's another thing, is if you were injured, how long can you sustain yourself with an injury? And an injury that like make you completely immobile from being discovered. Was the dog taken to her PLS? Yes, they were. But recently, you know, it's been so long, and there's been so many people up there. Using like a live scent dog is really hard, because the scent's been it's been so long since Cheryl Beth and her dog Raven was up there. So right now, and Raven's not a as they say, a cadaver dog, but she does have a really good nose, so she could pick up on stuff. But there was nothing picked up on by them. And I know earlier in the search, the sheriff's office had tracking dogs, and I'm sure they've had cadaver dogs up there. So no sign by any creature, you know, at all, if either way. So right now, I mean, they're still using dogs, and you know, dogs have a great nose, and great ears and great sight. So it's good to have that four-legged friend on our team, given their view on the surroundings. So where could she, if she's still alive and she's out in the wilderness, she has an injury, where her mobility is really, really low, and she can't move around too many places, where in that area would be a really good place where you would have shelter, you would have water, and you'd have food in a very, very small area, to where you could maneuver around enough to stay alive, but not be able to move yourself far enough to be discovered? That's a big question, with little answers. There's lots of places that I think that could happen near. Yeah, this is a very tough search. I mean, it's a case of completely vanished off the face of the earth. Like, Eric Cooper, I know you're probably gonna love this that I say this, but it's like aliens abducted her. Everything with her. She's just gone. Fell into a hole, got sucked up into space, just vanished with no sign whatsoever. And this is the longest search in Washington State history. I think there was like 3,000 hours logged searching for Samantha, all over the place, all different aspects, and no sign. So, you know, it's a mystery. Another thing that somebody brought up, and has been kicking around the base camps and around the forums and everything, is abduction. Okay, yes, it's a possibility. Abduction is a possibility. She could have been abducted and is alive right now. Her mother feels in her soul that her daughter is alive. And one thing I never argue with a woman's intuition. Moms have eyes in the back of their heads. And two, the connection between a parent and their child is uncanny and unfathomable. Um, Especially, I think, more so with moms. Blood bond, yep. That's right, Christine. So I think even more so with moms and their children, more as a greater, because women are emotional. They have that emotional attachment. They have, which goes far beyond, what most of us men have. They say women are emotional, men are logical, and there is truth to that. And in that truth lies the yes. A mother has that being inside her, has that child inside her. So she's building this, connection, emotional connection that transponds physicality, whereas us men, we don't have that. Considering all the searchers out there moving around, would you still be able to even see signs and know they were from Sam and not the others out there? I suppose you know the difference. No, it's really actually this late in the game, you can't tell. I got on there on day 8, and I think 82 to 85% positive that I found a pair of Sam's boot prints, but they were up high where she was wandering around that day. So they were only significant in the fact of, yeah, she was up here, but unfortunately it's such rocky terrain that the only time you can see is when they step off of the rock in the dirt or the snow or something. But nothing that would lead me or anybody else to say, oh, she went down this way, so sign right now with everybody that's been out there is, yeah, as any previous signs, been trampled since day 1. So any sign that we do find would have to be clearly outside of the zones that's been searched now. And that's what me and my bros, we pretty much do, is we try to go into the terrain where nobody else went because it was too dangerous, or we try to push further down than anybody did into terrain that nobody else has searched, because those areas wasn't searched. And that's where we're at now. It's like all the easy stuff has been searched. Now it's getting down to the really hard places, the cliff faces, the chimneys and the ridges, holes in the ground, mines, moats off the north face that are 1,000 plus feet down to them. So right now it's like the really hard spots, the really tough places are what hasn't been searched, and now is where we're really starting to dial our focus into the really tight nook and crannies. But then, so we're gonna go to that. Okay, another thing, Bud, you mentioned in a previous vid that if she had perished, there'd be birds overhead, or possibly the dogs would catch scent. Being that you've not seen this, is this a great sign? Yeah, good point. Yes. And that's where we're going to. So on my board, I have scenarios of where Sam is alive. And then those are all the hypotheses that, we just discussed of that she's still alive. And based off of the fact that her mother 100% believes that she is still alive. So I'm going with that. And the last thing I want to talk about was the mine complex. She could have, fallen into a mine shaft, a ventilation shaft, hurt her legs. She can't get out of it because parts of it's collapsed or whatever. And she's down there and there's water in there, and she's rationing off her food or whatever she has access to. I mean, you'll eat rats, and sometimes you'll find old rats in mines, or some other critters that you could eat. So, she could be salamanders. I see lots of salamanders in old mines. So, she could have fell into a mine shaft. Tough thing about that is finding it. It could be a 1 in a million shot finding that same ventilation hole, but there are buku. Every day I'm finding a new shaft. Every day I'm finding a new adit. The only thing I haven't found, that's the toughest one, is the caves and mines. It could go for a long time. Even if she was mobile in there, she could get lost. Yes, and especially the Sunrise Mine Complex has 18,000 feet. I mean, that's over 4 miles. over 4 miles of tunnels inside there. It's a huge thing, especially if you're wandering around in the dark. Major huge thing. But the only way she'd have gotten inside of one of those, especially the Sunrise Mine, is she fell into it or she went into it. And we went through and checked all the known adits and the ones that we could find. We scoured that mountain for the ones that we could find. And all the ones we could find, there was no trace that anybody went in or out of them. And then that area in the basin there on Vesper Creek, we searched all in the trees and all through there for any chance of ventilation shaft that she could have made it fall into, and haven't found one. But that doesn't mean that one doesn't exist, and that didn't happen. So yeah, so that's still something that's there. All right, now on to a gruesome thought, a hateful thought. And I don't like to think this, but because I promised someone's mom that I'm going to do everything in my power to find her daughter, I have to look at all aspects, no matter how ugly they are. So let's say Sam has moved on and she perished on the mountain. All right, Kevin was up there that night, him and people and park rangers, and yelling and screaming and whistling and whatnot, and there was no response. So that means that if she would have had to fall or gone a long distance, taking at the trailhead and forced into human trafficking. Yes, that's a possibility. Or, you know, she could be kidnapped and just being held against her will by some control freak. Who knows? But yeah, it's a possibility that has to be looked into. But right now, we have to rule out the mountain, because that's where our search is, and that area, that 6-mile area around there, has to be ruled out of. That's where she is, either alive or perished. Is we have to rule out that she's on that mountain before focus could be set somewhere else, which really sucks. I mean, we really would love to be able to attack all angles, but resources are so, minimal. When does that get ruled out? The mountain, I would say pretty much when, as far as me, where that she may have been abducted and is no longer the mountain. Yeah, a lot of people say that. As far as me, is through thorough search, by really scouring that area. I mean, I don't think she's on the mountain, because you'd be around the mountain in the wilderness out there, lost and spinning her wheels under the canopy. Yes, but as far as being on that mountain, I don't believe she is alive or dead. And that's another thing, is there's only a few places where you could fall and die and not be found. And the main one is off the north face of Vesper and the ridge that goes out to Sperry to the east. And then also the ridge that runs out towards Big Four and whatnot on the west. You fall off some of those places, they go from 400, 500 feet vertical cliffs down to snow moats up to a couple thousand. So yeah, if you fall down there, you're goner. You're not going to survive that fall, any of those falls. You will not survive them. And then if you did fall down there and died, you would leave some type of sign. Falling down that far, bouncing off the cliff, hitting that Bergschrung, the edge of the ice moat or the glacier. I mean, it's ice. And if you're flying at 150 miles an hour down the cliff, tomahawking, and you hit that edge of that ice, body parts are getting ripped off. Not to be gruesome and sound, gruesome, but that's just the fact of the matter. So the fact that there is, her pole would break, a rip off of, people have fallen down cliffs and their shoes have been come off, so I mean, so there would be some sign. I mean, there would be blood on the ice there, unless it's just a super freak 1 in a million chance that she just fell with all of her belongings, her hat, her sunglasses, all down the hole, never to be found. I mean, it's a real minimal thing, but it's still a possibility. Um, so falling close to the trail, it had to be a pretty big fall. Okay, animal attacks. Well, back to sign again. Some type of sign, her hat or clothes, if she was attacked and killed by an animal, and I mean, if she was coming down the mountain 3 or 4 or 5, that's a good time out here for cats and other animals, prey and predator, to be moving around. There is lots of cat sign up in that area. I've seen it. But you know, cat attack. If she was wearing her hat or sunglasses or something, you're gonna drop something. There's gonna be some blood in a cat attack. Not a lot, because they try to paralyze you first and then drag you off. They don't try to like maul you like a bear would if you got into an angry attack with a bear. A cat's just gonna pounce on you, bite the back of your neck, separate, your spinal cord, and then drag you off. And a cat's going to drag you probably, a third of a mile in that country or less to, some cache, to one of its dens, to a meat locker somewhere, and put you there. And we've searched in that Stillaguamish drainage a huge amount of little holes, cat hollows, ledges, under ice pack, any place where it could hide someone or drag someone, and nothing. So no sign. So cat attack is pretty low. What about where her car was? Was the dirt moved footprints to show that there was some kind of struggle at all? No. The police from the get-go, from what I understand, was like totally like would not entertain foul play or crime at all, or was not wanting to admit to it. That's as far as I know. And just for the record, I haven't talked to any of the sheriff's people, any of the search and rescue people, so all my knowledge is all secondhand from either Kevin or other people who have been involved. The amount of scenarios there would be signs, unless it was a freak accident that left none. Yeah, and we're back to that. Has the icy water that was in a video searched. So the lake was searched. At the time that she went missing, it was really frozen over. And even now that it's like partially frozen over, the places that still have ice on it, you can walk across pretty safely. So there was no sign that anybody would have fell into the lake, so therefore they didn't search it. Should it be searched? It might need to be. It might need to be searched in order to help rule out the mountain as where she is. So animal attacks, real unlikely. Now let's say she was forced off the trail further than where she would have gone and fallen. So the lower you get, thanks, Bookie. So the lower the terrain's pretty high. Vesper Peak's like 6,200 feet. The pass is 4,800. And then all the jagged peaks, they're all, thousands of feet tall. The ridges and cliffs, it's really cliffy. Well, thanks, Samantha. I try to inspire. My dad always said, lead by example, not by force. So that's what I try to do. So if she went off a trail, the lower you get. If you go off a trail, you're going lower and lower into the valleys. Or even if you're on the trail, you're always descending. So once you get out of that, like 4,500 foot elevation, your chances of falling and dying off a cliff or something gets lower and lower and lower, because the less danger and obstacles and hazards come across you down there. Get some cell phone info. Yeah, that's a direction that I think that's trying to be worked on right now, is anything with the cell phone. Picture cloud updates. This is under snow, either from falling through soft snow or avalanche. There wasn't a lot of avalanche slides that day. I know that some happened after she was missing. There was some rock slides, and we had some rock slides up there. But then again, it's still, when you're talking about ice and especially not a lot of snow, it's one thing when you have like a major avalanche that could just totally bury you, in 10, 20 feet of snow that you won't be seen. But up there, all of that was melted off. from when I went up there the first day on the 8th to now, 85% of all that snow has melted off. So it's easy to search underneath there or to see where where the snow has been broken through or fallen down and whatnot. And even the moats, the Bergschrungs on the north side and on a lot of sides, they're receding enough where now we could get better view down into them. We got further away by helicopter. We did run that with our helicopter. We ran a little bit. What was that last one?